The world's biggest mistake is assuming a calm face means a calm mind. That single line defines exactly why people never saw you coming. They looked at your gentle smile, your soft tone, your peaceful presence, and they convinced themselves you were harmless. They thought you were predictable, manageable, even easy to outplay. What they didn't know is that some of the sharpest thinkers on earth operate in silence while everyone else is busy performing. And here's a fact that proves it. Neuroscientists found that people who appear the most composed during conflict are often the ones whose brains are processing the fastest, catching details others completely miss. In other words, the people who look the calmest are often the ones running the deepest calculations. That was you, calm on the outside, calculating on the inside. Not in a sinister way, but in a "I know exactly how this will end before you even make your first move" kind of way. People didn't understand your wiring. They saw the angelic smile and assumed innocence, not realizing that behind that innocent expression was someone who had already solved the puzzle they were just beginning to assemble. It's not your fault. They simply ran into someone who learned the game of life the same way grandmasters learn chess. Quietly, privately, obsessively, and with a level of awareness most people don't even know exists. You weren't out here being mystical. You were just paying attention while everyone else was busy underestimating you. And let's be honest, sometimes you kept that smile on just to watch them confidently walk straight into their own trap. A little entertainment never hurt anybody. Their ego built the storyline, but your intuition wrote the ending. You didn't need drama, confrontation, or fireworks. You just needed patience, and patience has always been your secret superpower, even though you never brag about it, because, well, who brags about patience? Your life became a masterpiece of mixed signals they couldn't decode. Soft face, strong mind, kind heart, killer discernment, gentle energy, strategic precision. You smiled like an angel because your spirit was aligned, but you played chess like the devil because your awareness was sharp, your vision was long, and your intuition never lied. Tonight, we're diving into why your calmness fooled them, why your smile misdirected them, and how your strategy dismantled everything they thought they had over you. This isn't just a story, it's a revelation. And by the time we're done, even your viewers will understand why they should never underestimate someone who thinks deeply, moves quietly, and smiles knowingly. Number one, your kindness was never naivety, it was controlled access. People often mistook your kindness for innocence, like you were someone who didn't understand how the world worked. They thought you were just naturally open, naturally welcoming, naturally gentle. But the truth is, your kindness has always been a choice, not a default setting. You weren't kind because you were unaware. You were kind because you were observant. Every smile you gave, every soft response you offered, every second chance you allowed wasn't a result of weakness. It was a way of studying who was worthy of staying in your life and who was walking themselves out without realizing it. You never let people all the way in. You let them just close enough to reveal who they truly were. The way they handled your kindness told you everything you needed to know. If they respected it, they earned a spot in your world. If they abused it, they confirmed their own exit. Your kindness was the test, not the vulnerability. It was like you held a key that opened a small door, not the entire house. They got a glimpse, not the whole map. The reason people misread you is because most people use defense as their first language. They don't understand someone who chooses softness without being forced into it. They don't understand someone who forgives but never forgets the pattern. They don't understand someone who can be gentle without being gullible. So they assumed you were an easy target. They assumed you couldn't see the intentions behind the words, the motives behind the actions, or the cracks behind the smiles. What they didn't know is that your kindness sharpened your sight. It made every disrespect louder. It made every lie clearer. It made every shift in energy obvious. You caught everything without saying a word. You gave people space to show themselves, and they did, quickly. Some revealed their loyalty, others revealed their jealousy, and some exposed their entitlement. But none of it surprised you, because you were never naive. You were intentional. You were watching. You were filtering, and when you finally pulled back, they thought you changed. But the truth is, you were simply closing the access you never planned to keep open forever. Number 2, you allowed people to misread you because their assumptions revealed their intentions. You've always understood that people reveal more about themselves than they ever do about you. That's why you let them misread you. They looked at your calm face, your polite words, your gentle gestures, and immediately started writing stories in their minds. They assumed you were soft, unprepared, unaware, or incapable of seeing what they were really up to. And that was perfect, because their assumptions didn't just make them underestimate you, they exposed exactly who they were. Every misjudgment they made was like a map handed straight to you. When someone treated you as less than, it told you how they treated people they thought they could control. When someone assumed you wouldn't act, it revealed how they operated in secrecy, thinking the rules didn't apply to them. When they believed your kindness was weakness, it exposed their hunger for advantage, their eagerness to manipulate, their readiness to step over others for their own gain. You didn't need to ask questions or set traps. They were doing it for you with every word, every glance, every action. Allowing them to misread you was a silent strategy. You weren't passive or clueless. You were calculating. You let them play their game under the false belief that they were in control, and while they were busy overestimating their position, you were collecting data, learning patterns, observing tendencies, and mapping weaknesses. You let their ego guide them straight into the revelations you needed. And the beauty of it is that this approach never required confrontation or drama. You weren't revealing yourself until the moment it counted. You weren't fighting for power. They were handing it to you unknowingly. Their assumptions became your advantage because they told you exactly what they valued, what they feared, and where they would crack. You never had to guess. They showed themselves clearly while smiling at the illusion they created. In the end, their misreading wasn't your problem. It was your lens into the truth. You never played into their game. You played with their assumptions, and in doing so, you stayed 10 steps ahead. By letting them believe they understood you, you understood them completely, and that gave you a power they never even realized existed. Number 3, you never matched energy, you matched strategy. People around you often expected reactions that suited their drama. They wanted you loud when they were loud, aggressive when they were aggressive, chaotic when they were chaotic. They assumed that matching energy was the way to respond, and for a while many were baffled by how you remained composed, steady, and calm. But what they didn't understand is that you weren't quiet because you were intimidated or uninvolved. You were quiet because you were strategic. You didn't meet them on their level. You met them where the outcome would be in your favor. Matching energy is easy. Anyone can mirror emotion, mimic aggression, or escalate a situation. But matching strategy requires foresight, calculation, and patience. You watched, you timed, you measured, and you planned. While they were reacting in real time, you were thinking 3 moves ahead, considering every possible angle and predicting how their next step would expose them further. They believed they were setting the pace, but in reality, you were controlling the entire board without making a single unnecessary move. Your calmness wasn't passive. It was a weapon of precision. Your subtle actions, your measured words, your silence, and even your smiles were all deliberate. Every moment they thought they were pushing you, you were silently collecting information, weighing options and creating opportunities. They were playing emotionally and you were playing logically. They wanted confrontation, you wanted resolution. They wanted validation, you wanted advantage. That difference is what allowed you to dominate without appearing dominant. And here's the key: they underestimated the power of strategy because they were blinded by energy. Loud people often assume quiet people are weak. Impulsive people assume patient people are naive. And reactive people assume calculated people are slow. That's where you thrived. By not matching energy, you exposed their lack of control, their impatience, and their inability to see the bigger picture. You never fell into their chaos. You guided it, directed it, and waited until the perfect moment to make your move. In the end, they were exhausted, predictable, and exposed, while you remained unshaken, aware, and in full command. Your strength didn't come from fighting fire with fire. It came from knowing the fire, understanding it, and controlling where it would burn. Number 4, you made peace. Look innocent, but it was actually your weapon of control. Your peace has always confused people, and that confusion has been your greatest advantage. They expected reactions, arguments, explanations, or some kind of emotional performance. Instead, you gave them peace, steady, unbothered, unshaken peace. What they didn't understand is that your peace wasn't emptiness or avoidance. It wasn't you trying to keep the peace to stay comfortable. Your peace was intentional, and it worked like a silent force that shifted the entire dynamic of every situation you faced. When someone stays calm, the person who is acting out begins to expose themselves. That's exactly what happened with you. The more peaceful you stayed, the more their inner chaos surfaced. Your peace didn't calm them. It magnified everything they were trying to hide. They became louder, more defensive, more suspicious, and more impulsive. They began revealing who they truly were without you lifting a finger. Your peace wasn't just a shield. It was a spotlight. It illuminated motives, insecurities, and hidden agendas that would have stayed buried if you reacted the way they wanted you to. Peace also gave you clarity, and clarity gave you control. When your emotions stayed still, you saw everything clearly. Who was real? Who was pretending? Who was projecting? And who was hoping you'd collapse so they could feel powerful? You weren't detached, you were aware. You were reading energy, studying patterns, connecting dots, and making decisions that weren't based on impulse. Peace allowed you to think instead of react, and that alone put you in a position many people underestimate. Most people lose battles because they fight everyone. You didn't. You chose your battles based on wisdom, not ego. When you stayed peaceful, you were actually calling the shots without saying a word. They didn't realize that your calmness was setting the pace of the interaction. Your peace was dictating the tone. Your peace was controlling the moment. You made them respond to your stillness, and in doing so, you became the one steering the entire situation. Your peace looked innocent on the surface, but beneath that surface was a level of discipline, strength, and awareness that most people simply could not compete with. Number 5, you didn't outsmart them with intelligence. You outsmarted them with self-control. People often assume the smartest one in the room is the person who talks the most, argues the hardest, or knows how to use big words. But real intelligence isn't loud. It's disciplined, and that's where your power came from. You didn't win because you had more information, or because you analyzed every detail like a computer. You won because you knew how to manage yourself. While others were busy reacting, you were busy choosing. While they were driven by emotion, you were guided by intention. Self-control is one of the most underrated forms of power. It's the ability to pause when everyone expects you to explode. It's the strength to stay grounded when someone is trying to pull you into their chaos. It's the maturity to see the trap and not step into it, even when your pride wants to prove a point. You mastered that. You didn't rush decisions. You didn't let provocations drag you into pointless battles. You didn't let their attitude determine your behavior. You didn't give them the show they wanted, and that alone disarmed them more than any argument ever could. Your self-control made you unreadable, and that frustrated people. They couldn't tell if you were hurt, angry, unaffected, or planning something bigger. They wanted to get inside your head, but your discipline kept them locked outside. They couldn't figure out your next move because you didn't give them emotional breadcrumbs to follow. You stayed unpredictable not by doing too much, but by refusing to be predictable in your reactions. People who lack self-control always give themselves away. They expose their jealousy, their insecurity, their desperation, and their intentions without even realizing it. But you didn't reveal anything until you were ready. You didn't make decisions based on how you felt in the moment. You made them based on what made sense long term. That's why you won, not because you were the smartest person, but because you were the most centered. Your self-control let you see the game clearly, while others were blinded by their own emotions. And when you make choices from clarity, not chaos, you always end up 3 steps ahead, whether they like it or not. Number 6, you listened to every lie like it was a map, leading you to truth. One of your greatest strengths has always been the way you listen, not just to words, but to patterns, hesitations, inconsistencies, and the energy behind what people say. When people lied to you, you didn't rush to expose them or correct them. You didn't argue or try to force honesty out of anyone. Instead, you paid attention. You let the lie breathe. You let it unfold. And in that space, every false statement they made became a clue that pointed you straight to the truth they were trying to hide. A lie is never just a lie. It's a window. It exposes what someone is afraid of, what they want, what they're covering up, and how far they're willing to go to maintain an image. You understood that better than anyone. When someone lied to you, it didn't make you lose trust in yourself. It made you gain insight into them. You learned their motives, their weaknesses, their tendencies, and the level of respect they actually had for you. They thought they were outsmarting you, but all they were doing was revealing their true nature piece by piece. The reason this worked is because you never interrupted their performance. You didn't confront every contradiction. You didn't challenge every story. You let them talk. You let them build whatever narrative made them feel superior or protected. And while they were doing that, you were connecting dots. You were observing what they emphasized too much, what they skipped over too quickly, and what changed from one moment to the next. Their lies were teaching you more than their honesty ever could. Eventually, you began to see the entire picture. Who was real, who was pretending, who was hiding something, and who was trying to manipulate the situation for their own benefit. The truth didn't come from their words. It came from your ability to analyze those words without reacting emotionally. By the time you made your decisions, you weren't guessing, you weren't assuming, you weren't confused. You knew exactly who you were dealing with. And the people who lied to you never saw that their dishonesty gave you the very clarity you needed to walk away, level up, or reposition yourself without warning. Their lies exposed them, and your awareness protected you. Number 7, you made people comfortable enough to reveal what they would have hidden from everyone else. You have a presence that lowers people's guard without them even realizing it. Your energy feels safe, warm, and non-judgmental, so people naturally relax around you. And when people relax, they talk, they share, they confess, they overshare. They reveal truths they've kept locked away from others because they don't feel threatened by you. That's the part they never understood. You didn't need to interrogate anyone. You didn't need to dig for information. You didn't need to pressure anyone. Just being yourself made people expose sides of themselves they thought they could hide. It's not that you were manipulating them. You simply created an atmosphere where their true nature had nowhere to hide. People often walk around wearing emotional armor, afraid of being judged or challenged. But your calmness made them feel seen without feeling inspected. Your kindness made them feel understood without feeling controlled. That combination is powerful, and it quietly draws out the honesty they've been avoiding within themselves. They begin to speak freely, thinking the conversation is harmless, not realizing they're revealing major insights about their character, desires, fears, intentions, and loyalties. Some people mistook your ability to make others feel safe as a weakness. They believed it meant you were naive or easy to deceive. But what they didn't realize is that your openness isn't blindness, it's strategy rooted in authenticity. You learned more about people from their comfort than you ever could from confrontation. When someone feels safe, their real personality comes out. Their tone changes, their story changes, their ego relaxes, their mask slips, and you catch all of it. This is why you often saw people's true intentions long before they showed them openly. They told you exactly who they were without you even asking. They exposed how they think, what they value, and how they operate in relationships. And by the time they thought they were playing you, you already knew the ending of their game. You didn't need to outsmart them forcefully. They outed themselves effortlessly. You made people comfortable, and that comfort revealed the truth. That's why you stayed ahead without ever appearing to chase anything. You simply paid attention to what they volunteered, and it told you everything you needed to know. Number 8, you let people run their mouths. Because you knew time would reveal what your words didn't need to. You learned early that not every situation deserves your voice. Not every accusation needs your defense. Not every rumor deserves your attention. You understood something that most people never master. Time exposes truth far better than arguments ever could. That's why you didn't rush to correct lies or defend yourself against stories that were built on jealousy, insecurity, or pure imagination. You let people talk because you knew their words would unravel long before your silence ever would. People with guilty intentions always speak too soon, too loud, or too much. You didn't have to interrupt them. You let them set the stage, reveal their bias, and expose their real motives. When someone is desperate to paint you in a certain light, their obsession eventually gives them away. They repeat the same story too many times. They add new details that don't line up. They try too hard to convince others. And all the while you stayed silent, not because you were powerless, but because you understood that truth travels slower, yet it always arrives stronger. Your silence made them uncomfortable. They expected you to fight back, to crumble, to beg for clarity, or to defend your name. But you chose dignity over noise. You knew that explanations are useless to people who are committed to misunderstanding you. So you didn't waste your breath. You let time do what your words didn't need to. And time revealed everything. Their narrative fell apart. Their lies began to contradict each other. Their behavior exposed their envy. Their obsession made others question their motives. The very people who once believed their stories started noticing the gaps. And slowly, the truth they tried so hard to bury rose to the surface on its own, without you ever having to lift a finger. Your silence wasn't weakness, it was strategy. It protected your energy, preserved your integrity, and allowed every mask around you to fall naturally. While they were trying to score points in the moment, you were trusting the bigger picture. And the bigger picture always favors the one who stays true, steady, and patient. In the end, you didn't win because you spoke louder. You won because you waited wisely. Number 9, they realized you weren't isolated. You were observing people thought you were alone because you were weak, forgotten, or easy to control. They assumed your silence was a sign of powerlessness, not strategy. But the truth that finally hit them, and hit them hard, is that you weren't cut off from the world. You were studying it. You weren't abandoned. You were paying attention. And the part that shocked them the most is that you weren't just observing them. You were observing yourself. You were learning your own patterns, your own limits, your own triggers, and your own strengths on a level they never expected you to reach. People who live loudly often mistake quiet people for disconnected people. They confuse solitude with invisibility. They assume that if you're not reacting, you're not aware. But while others were busy performing, you were analyzing motives, power dynamics, hidden agendas, and emotional patterns. You picked up the small things, the inconsistencies, the subtle lies, the quiet shifts in tone. Over time, this turned you into someone who sees what others miss. This is why their entire plot couldn't survive your awareness. They didn't realize you built an understanding of the situation far deeper than they ever imagined. You became someone who could read the energy in a room before a word was spoken. You learned the difference between honesty and manipulation without needing to ask questions. And the more they thought they were isolating you, the more they were helping you sharpen your intuition, your emotional intelligence, and your spiritual discernment. They were basically training you without knowing it. Every attempt to box you in only expanded your clarity. Every effort to silence you only strengthened your insight. Every moment they thought you were losing, you were gathering the exact knowledge you needed to rise. By the time they realized it, it was too late. You had already seen through their tactics. You had already learned what motivated them. You had already decoded the dynamics they were trying so hard to hide. They expected you to be blind. They never expected you to evolve into someone who sees everything. And now, that awareness is the very reason their entire scheme fell apart. They underestimated a quiet observer, and they paid for it. Number 10. They didn't expect your spirit to outlive their strategy. What truly shocked them wasn't just that their plan failed. It was that you didn't break. They counted on your exhaustion. They expected your spirit to collapse under pressure. They assumed if they hit you in the right places, your trust, your peace, your stability, you would crumble. But you didn't. And that single fact exposed the huge flaw in their entire strategy. They were fighting your circumstances while you were powered by something internal. They attacked what they could see, but they underestimated what they couldn't. Your resilience, your inner fire, your spiritual grounding, and your ability to rise from situations that would have destroyed most people. People who operate from manipulation or envy always assume strength comes from money, support, influence, or external validation. They can't understand strength that comes from conviction, from purpose, from divine alignment. They expected that if they drained your resources, they drained you. But you proved that your real power didn't come from your environment. It came from your essence. Your spirit outlasted everything they threw at you, and that was the one outcome they never planned for. They kept piling pressure on you because they believed everyone eventually snaps. But every time you snapped back into place, every time you kept going, every time you refused to fold, it confused them. It made them rethink their own assumptions. How could you still have clarity? How could you still have empathy? How could you still have purpose? How could you still maintain your integrity when they used every trick to drag you out of character? What they didn't know is that your spirit had already survived the storms they could never handle themselves. Your endurance forced them to see the truth. Your strength wasn't physical, emotional, or social, it was spiritual. And spiritual strength terrifies people who rely on manipulation because it's something they can't control, can't weaken, can't destroy, and can't predict. The moment they realized your spirit wasn't something they could break, their entire plot lost its power. They finally saw that you were not someone they could defeat. You were someone built to outlive every tactic they tried. That was the breaking point for them and the turning point for you. Number 11. They finally realized you were the one person they couldn't manipulate. One of the biggest shocks that hit them wasn't just that you figured out the plot. It was the moment they realized you were completely unmoved by their manipulation. They kept trying to twist your emotions, play with your reactions, provoke you, confuse you, and bait you into traps. But no matter how many times they tried, you didn't fall for it. And that's rare, because most people bend when enough pressure is applied. Most people react when pushed the right way. Most people fold when their insecurities are poked. But you didn't. And that's when they knew their power over you was gone. Manipulators feed off control. They survive by getting into your mind, rewriting your story, and steering your responses without you noticing. But you became the one variable they couldn't figure out. You didn't respond the way they expected. You didn't break down the way they needed. You didn't give them the emotional explosion they were searching for. The calmness you carried was not ignorance. It was awareness. You saw the patterns. You noticed the shifts. You paid attention to the energy, and you stopped giving them access to your reactions. That was the moment the game changed. People who thrive on manipulation expect you to be predictable. They expect guilt to work. They expect fear to work. They expect shame to work. They expect confusion to work. But every tool they normally used on others failed with you. It rattled them, because being unable to manipulate someone forces them to see themselves clearly. When they realized they couldn't twist your words, couldn't distort your reality, and couldn't control your mind, they were forced to confront the uncomfortable truth. Their power wasn't real. It was just borrowed from people who didn't know their own strength. You knowing your worth, your intuition, your boundaries, and your spiritual clarity stripped them of their influence. It exposed how weak their tactics actually were. And that's what broke them. They finally saw that you weren't someone who could be played with. You weren't someone who could be guilt-tripped, intimidated, or controlled. You were someone who stood in your truth, and that truth made every one of their strategies collapse. Number 12. Your kindness was the trap they set for themselves. The irony in everything they did is that the very thing they thought made you weak became the reason their whole strategy collapsed. They looked at your kindness and said, "Perfect, easy target." They mistook softness for naivety, patience for blindness, and empathy for emotional stupidity. They thought they had you figured out. They thought they could use your good heart as a tool against you. But they didn't understand that real kindness isn't a weakness. It's a mirror. Whatever they brought toward you eventually bounced back onto them, and that's exactly what happened. Your kindness exposed their intentions without you lifting a finger. Every lie sounded louder when spoken to someone who had nothing but genuine energy. Every scheme showed its cracks when tested against someone who wasn't playing the same dirty game. Your kindness highlighted their cruelty, their manipulation, their insecurities, and their hidden motives. And because you weren't reacting the way they expected, they ended up revealing more than they ever planned to. They kept talking, kept plotting, kept trying new angles, and eventually they exposed themselves out of pure frustration. What they didn't realize is that kind people are observant. You listened, but you didn't absorb their toxicity. You showed grace, but you weren't blind to their character. You gave chances, but you weren't unaware of the patterns. You simply chose not to fight in the mud with them, and that alone pushed them into the exact trap they set for you. They underestimated the wisdom behind your silence, the strength behind your gentleness, and the intelligence behind your calm reactions. In the end, your kindness made their behavior look ridiculous. It made their bitterness stand out. It made their lies crumble. It made their hidden intentions come to the surface without you exposing anything. They exposed themselves trying to exploit you. And when they realized that the softness they mocked was actually the force that revealed everything, that's when they truly broke. Your kindness wasn't their weapon, it was their reflection, and they couldn't handle what it showed them. Number 13. You gave them the silence. They didn't know how to defend themselves against. The moment you stopped explaining yourself, they lost their biggest advantage. They were used to you clarifying, reassuring, defending, and over-communicating. They were used to the version of you that felt the need to prove your intentions or soften the impact of your decisions. But when you reached that point where you no longer owed them explanations, something shifted. Your silence wasn't passive, it was powerful. It cut off the fuel they depended on. It ended the debates. It ended the manipulation. It ended the emotional tug-of-war. And most importantly, it ended their ability to twist your words into something that suited their agenda. People who thrive on drama panic when their target stops engaging. They don't know how to fight someone who refuses to enter the ring. They don't know how to distort words that were never spoken. They don't know how to manipulate someone who gives them nothing to work with. Your silence became a wall they couldn't climb, couldn't break, and couldn't understand. It forced them to sit with their own actions. It forced them to question themselves. And the quietness you used so intentionally exposed every lie they built around you. They wanted you emotional, because emotional people are easier to control. They wanted you reactive, because reactive people can be blamed or redirected. But when you became still, they had to confront the truth. The problem was never you. And since chaos was their comfort zone, your calmness felt like punishment. Your silence denied them the satisfaction of seeing you beg, argue, or prove yourself. It denied them the narrative they were trying to write about you. It denied them the ego boost they depended on. They called you cold, distant, or heartless. But deep down, they knew the truth. Your silence was the most honest response you could have given. It told the whole story without explaining a single sentence. It gave you back your peace, your power, and your clarity. And it left them spiraling, trying to decode a message that was never meant for them. Your silence wasn't the absence of communication. It was the end of the game. Number 14. You didn't win by exposing them. You won by evolving beyond them. The most powerful part of your strategy wasn't in catching them in a lie, confronting their schemes, or even proving them wrong. It was in outgrowing them completely. They were busy plotting, scheming, and obsessing over what they thought they could take from you. And all the while you were evolving. Your growth didn't happen overnight. It didn't happen because you wanted revenge. It happened because you refused to let their toxicity dictate your energy, your decisions, or your future. And that's what truly broke them. The realization that no attack, no manipulation, and no argument could touch the version of yourself you were becoming. People spend their lives trying to bring others down, assuming that controlling someone else will elevate them. They calculated your weaknesses, amplified your mistakes in their minds, and predicted every possible response. But while they were focused on the battle, you were focused on the blueprint. You were working on yourself, strengthening your mind, sharpening your awareness, and refining your emotional intelligence. Every setback they tried to impose became a lesson. Every betrayal became insight. Every manipulation became confirmation of their own character. And in observing it, you learned without reacting. By evolving, you made their influence irrelevant. Their strategies, their lies, and their pressure lost power because you no longer operated on the same level. You weren't blind to what they were doing. You simply refused to let it matter. They wanted a reaction, but your evolution didn't require one. They expected to see struggle, but they saw growth. They assumed the same person was there they could control, but that person had already leveled up beyond their reach. And that's why you didn't have to expose them. Their defeat wasn't in shame or punishment, it was in your transformation. They lost because they could not keep up. You didn't respond to their chaos. You transcended it. By the time they realized the game had changed, it was too late. You had already moved beyond their manipulation, beyond their plans, and beyond their understanding. Your evolution became the ultimate proof that no one can touch someone who masters themselves first. Here's a superb, deeply resonant conclusion for your video. Everything we've uncovered today points to one undeniable truth. Your strength has always been invisible to those who tried to underestimate you. They thought your kindness made you weak, your calm made you passive, and your silence made you oblivious. They were wrong. Every smile, every measured word, every patient pause was a move in a game they couldn't even understand. You didn't need to prove yourself because your strategy, your awareness, and your evolution were already working in ways they couldn't see. You played chess while they were busy playing checkers. Your power has never been about brute force, loud confrontation, or proving a point. It's been about control over yourself, clarity in the chaos, and vision beyond the immediate moment. Your kindness revealed truth, your patience collected intelligence, your silence exposed motives, and your calmness dictated the pace of the game. Every attempt to manipulate you, deceive you, or corner you only sharpened your awareness. Every plot they crafted against you became a lesson they didn't intend to teach. And in the end, you weren't just surviving, you were evolving, transcending, and quietly winning in ways that left them powerless to stop you. The greatest part of all this is that your victories weren't about them. They were about you. They weren't about revenge or exposure. They were about mastering yourself, understanding the world, and stepping into a level of awareness and strength that very few can ever reach. You didn't just outplay them. You outgrew them. You didn't just see the truth. You became the embodiment of it. And that is why no one will ever be able to truly control you, predict you, or overpower you. If you felt the power of this message, don't let it stop here. Subscribe to the channel so you never miss these deep truths that reveal the strength you already hold inside. Like this video if it resonated with your journey. Comment below to share your story or insights, and share it with someone who needs to understand the quiet power of strategy and self-mastery. Your journey isn't just about winning, it's about knowing your worth, trusting your path, and realizing that every move you make shapes a reality they never saw coming. Stay sharp, stay aware, and remember, while they were playing the game, you were mastering it. God bless you.